I turn off one thing and everything. Oh, this is being recorded. Thank you. I'd like to have you complete a poll of who is in the room. I'm going to launch this poll, and if you could take a minute to look at it and respond to it, I would greatly appreciate it. This helps me to figure out who is in the room. Make sure you submit. All right. I'm going to share the results. It looks like we have a variety of people here from all grade levels. We have many classroom teachers. Welcome, a couple administrators and curriculum specialists that have joined us as well. And when we take a look at the degree of what you know about the three dimensions, there is a wide variety as well. But many of you are here because you want to learn more. And so thank you so much for completing that poll. Let me stop share. Put that away. And we're going to ask, we're going to use the chat to share our ideas and thoughts with each other. So if you can disable, your microphones were disabled when you came in, and we're going to keep those disabled as we continue along for the time. But I'm going to guarantee you there is going to be lots of time for you to communicate with each other through the chat. My goal for the hour is to help you shift the way you think about teaching science. And to help achieve that goal, there are three objectives for our time together. By understanding how the Arizona Science Standards build students' scientific knowledge and abilities over multiple years to make sense of the natural and designed world around them, students will become scientifically literate. As we go through our day-to-day, and as you take this information and reflect upon it, as well as implement it, remember the AEIOUs. Since the pandemic, I think somebody has their microphone on, just kind of checking on that. All right. I don't know about you, but since the pandemic has started, my oldest son has suggested a few streaming videos to watch. In doing so, I've discovered that I cannot just jump into a middle of a show like Lost or The Ozarks or Vikings without starting with the first season. Have you ever started watching a series in the middle of the season? If so, how did you gain full understanding of the storyline? Go ahead, share with me how you did that in the chat. Yeah. Read the previews, talk to others who watched the show, ask your friends, read the comments online. Yeah, you found ways to figure out the plot so you could just jump in. For me, to gain a full understanding and appreciation of the main characters, the setting, the plot, and conflict that has occurred, I need to begin at the beginning. Season 1, episode 1. Of course, this takes an investment of time, a commitment to watch a video series from season one. This is just like science education. And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to stop my share for a moment, and we're going to think about this in regards to science education. So hold on for just a minute as I share a different view as we
And
think.
while Sarah is doing that, I just wanted to pop in because she's preparing to let you know how your certificates work. I will be putting in, it takes me about 24 to 48 hours to input your attendance. And then you'll know I've actually marked you attended because you'll get a survey directly from the system. Once you fill out the survey, then you can print your own certificate from your ADE Connect account. And I'll keep reminding you about this throughout using the chat. Thanks.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thinking about science education and thinking about a series of episodes, seasons. If this was our high school season, and I shook this up, what information do our students need to know so that they could be able to discuss the phenomena that is happening here? What prior seasons knowledge would they need to know? Give me a moment to. Is there information they would need to know? What about if we were in middle school and we were looking at this phenomena and we were studying weather? What information from previous seasons would help us to explain this phenomena in regards to weather? Would there be information from previous seasons that we would need to know to be able to describe this phenomena? What about this phenomena? As upper elementary students, would there be information that is critical for our students to understand what's happening here in making models? And here I have a cup full of water, along with a cap. What information would my youngest learners learn? Paperclip, penny, cork, my youngest scientists and engineers. Is there information from this phenomena that would help them explain this phenomena, which would then help them explain this, which at the end in high school would help them explain this? I'll stop sharing here. Give you a moment to think about that. So, for our students in science education, for us to understand this phenomena, we cannot expect our students to be able to comprehend and find the meaning and relevance of core science ideas in upper grades if science was not taught in the prior years. Science, too, can be seen as a series of seasons and episodes that has a story plot with main characters that as the story is told, enter and exit, each having a story within a story. And when the seasons conclude, we understand the interrelationships each had in revealing the story. So, to understand how the story can develop over time, we need to look at our new standards. One goal of our new standards is that the core ideas will be going deeper. The structure moves away from the mile wide, inch deep approach to science education. Here's a quote from the Next Generation Science Standards and the Framework by the Academies, National Academies Press, that we need to limit a number of core ideas, a small number of core ideas, but yet we need to give them time for the students to engage in them through scientific investigations and argumentation, and so they can have a depth of understanding of the core ideas. This is different than our old Arizona science standards that look like a laundry list of facts. Students know this, students know that. With these deeper and more in-depth core ideas, a consequence of this goal is that to have deeper understanding and incorporating the other two dimensions, the cross-cutting concepts and the science and engineering practices, some things have been removed. And it may be our favorite activity that we love to teach. It may no longer be appropriate, and we will have to let it go. The second goal of our new standards is that learning is a progression. Structure is intended to create a clear and solid progression of ideas from K through 12, building and deepening student knowledge in developmentally appropriate ways. This is not a new idea, and our new standards implements this idea in a very robust and intentional way. Our standards were developed with two main resources in hand. A framework for K-12 science education gave guidance on the structure of having three dimensions, and specifically on two of the dimensions, the cross-cutting concepts and science and engineering practices. Our core ideas, the third dimension, comes from working with big ideas of science education. So now that we have a background of our core ideas and of how our standards came about, let's get a little bit more on the hierarchical structure of our standards, and let's explore it one layer at a time. First, we start with all science. In Arizona, our core ideas are divided into two categories: knowing science and using science. The knowing science are the disciplines of science into the three broad areas: the physical science, the life science, the earth and space sciences. The core idea for using science connects scientific principles, theories and models, engineering and technological applications, and societal implications to the three broad disciplines. They're interconnected. All standards in Arizona have both a core idea for knowing science and a core idea for using science. To keep things simple, these disciplines are abbreviated in our standards, PLENU. And each discipline is divided into a handful of core ideas, or sometimes we call them CIs. These are the big ideas of each field. They appear consistently from K-12, and they are identified using the discipline abbreviation and numbers: P1 for physical science, core idea 1, L3, core idea of life science, the third one. U2, using science, uh, number 2. So, how do we come about these core ideas? Well, there's 4 criteria that was used. And take a moment to look at these 4 criteria that all core ideas should have. In order to be chosen as a core idea, an idea had to meet at least 2 of these criteria. So as we dig into each of those core ideas, we're going to come back and see, are have this criteria been met? In our Arizona Science Standards document, the core ideas are laid out like this. We have our 10 core ideas for knowing science and our 3 core ideas for using science. So I think you're probably ready to dig deep now into those core ideas. So let's begin. Let's begin with the core ideas of knowing science and physical science. And if you have a piece of paper and a pencil or pen, I'm going to ask you to write down your ideas for some titles for our episodes, our series of our science education K-12. So just in case you have that pencil and paper around, you could jot your ideas around. So let's begin with P1. All matter in the universe is made of very small particles. According to Working with Big Ideas of K-12 Science Education, by the end of students' K-12 experience, they should have had the opportunity to learn that atoms are building blocks of all matter, living and non-living, that the behavior and arrangement of atoms explains the properties of different materials. In chemical reactions, atoms are rearranged to form new substances. Students can use the atomic theory to explain many observations and phenomena they experience in the science laboratory and in daily life. A rich understanding of atomic theory leads to a deeper understanding of why there are so many different substances in the world. And it also helps explain biological processes such as protein construction and folding. A broad range of phenomena can be explained based on understandings of these particles, their motion, and the forces among them. This is a powerful core idea that objects are made from materials, and materials are made from one or more substances built from atoms. Understanding the size of an atom creates a challenge for learners. So, when we think about the cross-cutting concepts of scale, proportion, and quantity will be critical with this core idea. Energy and matter is a natural cross-cutting concept that will be a lens that students will use as they delve into P1. Now, as you think about our storyline and as we progress through the grades, we need to think of what we might title each episode in the series. Maybe the investigative or anchoring phenomena that the students are going to figure out. We might wonder one of these. Are you thinking of any titles? If so, write them down. P2. Objects can affect other objects at a distance. All objects have an effect on other objects without being in contact with them. In some cases, the effect travels out from the source to the receiver in the form of radiation, like light waves. In other cases, action at a distance is explained in terms of the existence of a field of influence between objects, such as magnetic, electric, or gravitational field. Cause and effect Systems and system models, and stability and change are three cross-cutting concepts that can help students build their conceptual understanding of this core idea and others. As Jasper Green wrote in his book, this is another powerful idea that every particle in our universe attracts every other particle with a gravitational force. These could be some of our titles for a season for this core idea. Are there others that you're thinking of? Here is P3. There are three main component ideas for this core idea. First, forces and motion. Secondly, types of interactions. And thirdly, stability and instability in physical systems. All Arizona graduates should have learned that a force acting on an object is not seen directly, but is detected by its effect on the object's motion or shape. If an object is not moving, the forces acting in it are equal in size and opposite in direction, balancing each other. Since gravity affects all objects on Earth, there is always another force opposing gravity when an object is at rest. In addition, students should know that unbalanced forces cause change in movement in the direction of the net force. When opposing forces acting on an object are not in the same line, they cause the object to turn or twist. This effect is used in some simple machines, as we know. Although any of the cross-cutting concepts can be used as a lens to deepen students' understanding of the core ideas, I would argue that cause and effect, systems and system models, and stability and change are vital ones for this core idea. What type of titles are you thinking of for our science series? Got any written down? Any for this core idea? Would any of these work? P4. According to Working with Big Ideas, by the end of a student's high school experience, they should have had the opportunity to learn that many processes or events involve changes and require an energy source to make them happen. Energy can be transferred from one body or group of bodies to another in various ways. In these processes, some energy becomes less easy to use. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. Once energy has been released by burning a fossil fuel with oxygen, some of it is no longer available in a form that is convenient to use. As you think about this idea, what cross-cutting concepts come to your mind as you make sense of this core idea? Systems and system models and energy and matter are two that I thought of that would help students figure out the phenomena. And what might be the story that our students can dig into throughout their K-12 education? You might just have, why is it important to conserve energy resources if energy can't be destroyed? As we reflect on these four core ideas, I want you to think about that criteria that is required to be a core idea. What evidence do you have that these four core ideas fit at least two of the criteria for being recognized as a core idea for knowing physical science? I'll give you a moment to think about this, looking at those criteria, and to respond in the chat. You kind of finish typing in your thoughts. Thank you, Lindsay, for noting that they're important across multiple sciences. Uh, uh, Thank you. We're going to quickly move along. We're going to turn now to the core ideas of knowing Earth and space science. E1, the composition of the Earth and its atmosphere and the natural and human processes occurring within them shape the Earth's surface and its climate. Wow, this is a big core idea. This core idea focuses on the phenomena that results from Earth's interacting systems, how matter and energy interact between the geosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere, and biosphere at a range of spatial and temporal scales. This includes the interrelationships between global systems such as the rock cycle, the water cycle, and the surface processes of weathering, erosion, and deposition. Mechanisms that drive Earth's internal motions, the causes of weather and climate, and the pivotal role that water plays across all of these global systems and surface processes. This core idea also includes how humanity affects Earth's processes, Earth's natural resources, and natural hazards. So, when we think about the cross cutting concepts that will help our students understand this big core idea, there are several key cross cutting concepts, such as systems, energy, pattern, scale, and cause and effect, that can be used to explore and explain Earth phenomena. One cross cutting concept that is in the foreground, though, is stability and change. This cross cutting concept is key for students to understand that Earth is constantly changing. Systems are dynamic. There is no such thing as a static system. Although for students, it may seem as if the world around us does not change very much. This core idea aims to foster in them a sense that as a whole, the full scale Earth system is constantly and continually shaping and reshaping itself. Here are a few titles of some episodes for this core idea. Can you think of others? E2. This core idea is about how our sun and 8 planets and other small objects orbiting it comprises the solar system. Our students by the end of high school should understand that day and night and the seasons are explained by the orientation and rotation of the Earth as it moves around the sun. That the solar system is part of a galaxy of stars, gas, and dust, one of many billions in the universe, enormous distances apart. Many stars appear to have planets. The Earth's place in the universe engages students in increasingly large spatial and temporal scales as they progress through our education system, beginning with supporting their connectedness to what they can observe and experience. But then we quickly move the students out to scales that require models, simulations, and representations within which to interact and make sense of the phenomena. Students will need support in engaging in the types of spatial reasoning required to construct scientific explanations. Both patterns and scale, proportion, and quantity will be two cross-cutting concepts to be able to describe the universe as a whole and address its grand scale in both space and time. As you consider the titles of episodes for this core idea, think about the overall structure, the composition, and history of the universe, the forces and processes by which the solar system operates, and Earth's planetary history. What might be some other titles for our K-12 season of science? Let's reflect on these two core ideas of Earth and space science. What do you notice about these core ideas? What are some of your wonderings about these core ideas? I'll give you a minute to think, and then you can respond in the chat. Hmm. So you finish up writing your response. Go ahead and hit enter. Hmm. They- There's a lot of higher level thinking, and they're going to have to think of things on different scales. Surely your question, how did scientists determine the size of the planets and the distance between them? Think about this question. I've been kind of leaning towards the cross-cutting concepts, but we have that other dimension of our standards is the practices. Which science and engineering practices do you predict will be essential for your students to be engaged in while studying these Earth and space science core ideas? And why do you think they'll be essential? Hmm. Okay, now I'll give you a minute to think through this. What practices will be essential for your students to be engaged in while studying the Earth and space science core ideas? And why would you think that practice or practices would be necessary? Hmm. The sense making practices, yeah, of looking at data, making models, creating explanations. Hmm. Colin, engaging in argumentation. Yeah, thank you. We'll move on to the life science, which is our last core idea of knowing science. L1, organisms are organized on a cellular basis and have a finite lifespan. By the end of high schools, students should have learned that all organisms are composed of one or more cells. Multicellular organisms have cells that are differentiated according to their function. All the basic functions of life are the result of what happens inside the cells which make up an organism. You should know that all living things, the simplest of organisms, a single cell, has structures and processes that allow it to engage in these life activities of growth, reproduction, obtaining energy, and responding to their surroundings. This core idea, L1, is foundational to the life science discipline in that it allows one to explain a variety of phenomena that unite all living things. I would argue that energy and matter and structure and function are two cross-cutting concepts that will help students conceptually understand this core idea. Are you thinking of some titles that could go with this core idea? Here are a few that I thought of. L2, organisms compete with or depend on other organisms for the same basic materials and energy that cycle through our ecosystems. In the book, Disciplinary Core Ideas Reshaping Teaching and Learning, Anderson and Doherty note that there are three important reasons for teaching this core idea. First, our students can experience and appreciate the natural world. Secondly, our students will be able to understand the services that ecosystems provide, including our food, the oxygen we breathe, almost all of our clothing, shelter, and fresh water. Third, our students will be able to understand the nature and limits of an ecosystem's response to disturbances and the difference between disturbances that cause minor changes and disturbances that profoundly affect how ecosystems function and the services that they provide. When studying ecosystems, we are focused on a system and the size of that system needs to be defined. With that being said, the cross-cutting concepts of scale, proportion, and quantity, systems and system models, and energy and matter are key as students trace matter and energy through ecosystems by making connections among processes at different scales. When you're thinking of different scales, for example, think about the cellular level. The cellular metabolic processes such as photosynthesis, cellular respiration, and biosynthesis. At the organism scale level, the processes such as eating, breathing, growth, and digestion. And lastly, think about matter, cycling, and energy flows at the ecosystem scale. Thinking about some themes or titles of episodes that can be used for this core idea, these are a few that I thought of. L3, genetic information is passed down from one generation of organisms to another. As we dig into this core idea, we can break it into two main categories: inheritance of traits and variation of traits. At the K5 level, these two areas are not differentiated. The main focus is recognizing similarities between parents and offspring. Kittens look like their cat parents, and puppies look like their dog parents. When we get into middle school, we begin to differentiate between inheritance of traits and variation of traits. Students are introduced to the core mechanisms of inheritance. Each trait is determined by two alleles, one inherited by each parent. At this level, students also add a layer of mechanism to their understanding of gene function by learning that the instructions genes carry are for making proteins. The focus at the middle level grade band is the understanding that proteins are a key mediator of genetic phenomena, and that problems in protein function have serious consequences to the organism's traits. In high school, students deepen their understanding of the relationship between genetic information and traits as they learn about DNA as the molecules that carry the genetic code. High school students will delve into events that occur at the cellular and microscopic organization levels compared to the other grade bands. Organisms reproduce by passing down their genetic information from one generation of organisms to another is a powerful core idea. All of the CCCs will help students learn this core idea, but providing the lenses of patterns, cause and effect, and structure and function may help students connect the dots easier as they learn core idea L3 throughout their K-12 education. Are you thinking of some science titles? What do you think of these? L4. This core idea helps us make sense of both the unity and diversity of life and come to a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of all living things. The framework for K-12 science education broke this idea into four components. First, evidence of common ancestry and diversity. Students will explore the data patterns that help us see the unity and diversity of life in terms of measurable similarities and differences among DNA sequences, patterns of development, and morphological traits evident in both living organisms and in the fossil record. Second component, natural selection and adaptation. Through these two, students notice patterns that species tend to have traits that allow them to survive and reproduce, and these traits vary in different environments. And the fourth component, biodiversity and humans. This component highlights global patterns of diversity and how humans can affect those patterns. For our students, this is a powerful core idea that the diversity of organisms, living and extinct, is the result of evolution by natural selection. You probably guessed that the key cross-cutting concept that will help students is patterns. And here are some titles that I thought for our science series. I hope you're still writing some down. These life science core ideas are not new to Arizona science education. The focus may be different at different grade levels, along with the depth of understanding that will be required. What are some ways of taking the knowing of life science core ideas into doing life science core ideas? I'll give you a moment to think about that. What might be some ways that we can take the knowing of life science into doing life science? Yeah, outside, conservation, looking at environmental problems, moving away from being in front of a computer. All those, the engineering projects, working the biosphere, connecting with society. I'll let you continue on. You just dived into the core ideas of knowing science. But remember, we also had the using science core ideas. So we're going to delve into these for a little bit. U1. This core idea of using science, number one, is a combination of two big ideas that were in the Working with Big Ideas document. And we combined the two into one. So it is a really big core idea of using science. Our students need to learn that science is a search to explain and understand phenomena in the natural world. There is no single scientific method for doing this. The diversity of natural phenomena requires a diversity of methods and instruments to generate and test scientific explanations. One fundamental goal for K-12 science education is a scientifically literate person who can understand the nature of scientific knowledge, and that a characteristic of scientific knowledge is that it is open to revision in light of new evidence. Science is a way of explaining the natural world. It is both a set of practices and the historical accumulation of knowledge. These 8 themes come from Appendix H of the Next Generation Science Standards. And these 8 themes can be our themes, our titles for our episodes as we teach science across the grade bands. U2. This graphic illustrates the relationship among science, engineering, and technology. Again, as noted in disciplinary core ideas, reshaping teaching and learning, scientific inquiry and the resulting knowledge play a key role in our quality of life. Yet they are not the sole component of it. Engineers use scientific knowledge to develop technologies that address the problems and needs of the human populations. In return, these technologies and engineered solutions can contribute to the furthering of scientific inquiry. This core idea of using science can deepen students' understanding of the usefulness of the core ideas of knowing science. It can deepen students' understanding of the usefulness of the physical science, life science, earth and space knowing science. It deepens students' understanding of the science and engineering practices and how they are used together to solve real world problems. Engineering design can motivate to students because we are surrounded by engineered products. Think about the themes that can be part of our series as students generate multiple possible solutions to a variety of problems. U3. Through this standard, our students will understand that the use of scientific knowledge and technologies makes many innovations possible. Whether or not particular applications of science are desirable is a matter that cannot be addressed using scientific knowledge alone. Ethical and moral judgments may be needed based on such considerations as justice or equity, human safety, and impacts on people and the environment. Take a moment to read this quote from our framework for K-12 science education. Are you thinking of some themes as we progress through our education? Our standards include both the using and knowing science core ideas. What is the advantage of having them intertwined in a standard, such as this 5P1, U2.3? Hmm. Yeah. Helps them see the connection, gives them a deeper understanding. Thank you. Like, as we continue on, but please continue to put your thoughts in. I lost my cursor. Oh, sorry about that. These are our core ideas. We have 10 knowing science and 3 using science. If you're thinking of some themes and titles, I know some of you have already put them in the chat. Continue putting them in the chat as we continue on. Ask if you have any questions, and if so, if you can put them in the chat, and we'll have Sarah and Rebecca hold on to them until we get to the end, and I can answer them then. Remembering our series, and that each series includes episodes that progress to a final season. For us in education, the final season is high school. But how do these core ideas progress? Let's take a look at our Arizona Science Standards and this dimension, the core ideas. At the Arizona Department of Education website academic standards page, you can click on the science standards. Here you can download the 2018 standards, but I'd like for you to look at the row that says vertical progressions. Here you will find the progressions of knowing science, and it looks something like this. Take a moment and look at P1 and how it progresses. What do you notice? And you can put your ideas in the chat. Yeah. Thank you, Jessica. What do you notice about this progression of P1? It's increasing. Thank you. That the rigor increases along with the cognitive ability as the students. The complexity is increasing. I also want you to take notice that remember how our science standards are also grouped by grade band. P1, just like all the other core ideas, repeat in each grade band. So you have P1 in K2, you have P1 in 3rd through 5th, you have the P1 core ideas in the middle school grade band, and you have P1 in the high school. So you can build that progression over time. In the beginning, I shared this phenomena with you and asked you what knowledge did students need to know to figure out the science behind each one. It is important that these core ideas are built across time to support deeper and more meaningful understandings and of forming connections between the ideas so that students can apply their knowledge to novel situations. We cannot expect our students to be able to comprehend and find the meaning and relevance of core ideas in fifth grade if science was not taught in the prior years. The fifth grade teachers do not have time to binge teach all the content that was expected to be taught in the lower grades. Nor is it fair to students to expect them to be where we want them to be in our season, in our episode, if they are unfamiliar with the main characters and storyline. Science is like a streaming video series. Science, too, can be seen as a series of seasons and episodes that has a story plot with main characters, and that as the story is told, these characters enter and exit, each having a story within a story that when the season concludes, we understand the interrelationship each had in revealing the story. As we put a bow on our time together today, the key takeaway is that the core ideas build a conceptual toolkit that allow all students to continue to learn, explore, and explain throughout their lives. What questions do you have as we end our time together? Hmm. Great question, Shirley. We And I would love if there's, as so many of students are entering these new standards at older grade levels, how do we scaffold the previous episodes to support their understanding? Those of you who are there, any ideas that you like, advice you'd like to give to Shirley? I think my first advice to you, Shirley, is that mainly when we look at the SCPs, science and engineering practices, look at the grade band below and help scaffold that. Because if they can do those things like analyze data and develop arguments and make explanations, that can help them in other modes of learning. And we may need to say, you know what, there for a while, we may have a gap, and that's okay. And that's why we have these years of implementation to help us do this. Sorry. Thank you so very much for those of you who have joined me today. I'm going to stop sharing. And as I said earlier, and I know as Rebecca has put into the chat, you will receive a copy of this presentation along with a resource page to tomorrow. I'm guessing she'll send it out tomorrow with a follow-up email. Thank you. I'm looking through and seeing if there. No, there's not that scope and sequence. That would be a district level decision. Good question, though. Hope, are you still here? Yes. Yes. My bottle. Let me change my, so you can see it.
Sorry, I don't know what's happening with my internet. I have like 10 tractors outside and I think they're affecting my internet. So sorry for the delay.
No, that's okay, but you are correct. It's two different beads, and the beads, of course, are different densities. And then there's different liquids in there. It's salt water and alcohol, rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol. And this is actually comes from, you can just buy the whole set from Educational Innovations or teachersource.com. It's
Okay.
called the poly density bottle.
Oh, that was really cool. I liked how they like separated and then they came back together. Huh.
So, other questions? Thank you, everyone. We'll be shutting the room here in just a few seconds.